This is not a drill. This is episode 299 of the Thursday Night Podcast. We are, in fact, back after a couple of weeks off. Georgia State's athletic season is done, and so are we for the rest of this athletic year and for a couple of months, which get to at the back end of this episode as far as, yes, we are going on a break with the conclusion of the baseball season and all the rest of it. Really not going to belabor the point of what, we've missed a bit of time here. I tried to fill as best we can, but just kind of schedules are what they are. The schedule of the season is what it is, and there's less stuff to cover. And so I was glad we were able to get David Shealy on to talk about THERSday going to Tampa Bay. Obviously, stuff has started there with them going to rookie camp, and so check out that interview if you have not already. Basically, the only thing left to talk about is just a few weeks of baseball that we have missed since we've been away. I'm just going to, with the greatest of respect, yada yada through what kind of just happened to end the season. Then we'll take the discussion where it goes. This is not going to be one of our longer episodes. I would hazard a guess this is going to be one of our shorter episodes, in fact. And should start at what was kind of a milestone, because we left it off. They had a big road trip to Louisiana that was going to determine maybe where they were going to land, how good they could have finished in the regular season, and they get swept on the road there, which has been the type of series they've lost before. They go on to a series they've literally always lost before, and did not this time, because for the first time ever, they won a series at Georgia Southern. They took 2 of 3 in Statesboro. They have not won a series ever at Georgia Southern, so that stat, when I saw it a few weeks back, rocked me. It was like, how is that? Even given that they haven't been in the league that long and that Georgia Southern has historically been a really good baseball program for the Sun Belt, still pretty shocking. But they
almost swept them too.
Yeah, they let the last game there slip a bit. They won the first 2 and really should have had a sweep. They end up getting 2 or 3 at home against a good App State team as well to close out in style in the bus lot. They end on a winning series there down in Panthersville, and it gets them to the 9 seed in the Sun Belt tournament. So I think we had been misinformation on this podcast, talking about the top 8 make the Sun Belt tournament. It's the top 10, so they had a little bit more leeway. They got in. They did what they needed to close out the season with 2 series wins. They go to Montgomery for what was, if you were not following it, just Mother Nature was the main character. There was a game played in Troy's stadium, a little bit away from Montgomery, because the weather just necessitated they had to get a game in, and they were not going to be able to do it in Montgomery. So crazy stuff going on there. Some weather delays in Georgia State's games that they played. They start with a 17-1 just rousing victory over Old Dominion in what was the single elimination portion of the tournament on last Tuesday, a week ago as we were recording this podcast, which got them into the main field, so to speak, which meant at that point is double elimination for everyone. They were the same as the 1 seed Southern Miss that they ended up playing in the first game as far as the stakes the rest of the way. You can win, you can lose once and you're still safe. Sends you to loser's bracket and you have a lot of battling left to do. That is what they end up doing. They battled really hard, but they lose 7-6 to Southern Miss the following day on Wednesday. And then on Thursday night, in what ended up being an elimination game, they play South Alabama, who was the 5 seed who had lost to Troy. They are down 4-0. They get 4 runs late to tie it at 4, and then a 3-run home run given up in the bottom of the 8th. They go down quietly in the 9th, and the season ends with a 27-30 record. They fall to South Alabama. Southern Miss ends up winning. When all said and done, the whole tournament, they beat Louisiana in the championship. 5 Sun Belt teams have made the NCAA baseball tournament. Obviously, Southern Miss is the auto bid, and they were going to be in no matter what. Coastal Carolina has made it. Texas State made it. Troy made it, and Louisiana made it. And Georgia State did not. It's another losing season. I think the tenor of which, I don't know. It's a disappointment in the sense of they had shown some progress and gotten some 30-win seasons a couple of years ago, and they have fallen off that. But they steadied the ship a good bit. It would have been a lot more of a whimper of an end of a season if they did not make Montgomery at all, if they didn't win any games there, if they just lose in the first game, and then that's it. So it's not really a progress-filled season. Kind of more of the path they had been on. And now it does turn to like you're hoping that everything flips with the new stadium, which we've been talking about on.
Good luck.
Yeah, like it. And I pulled up the stats. The small ball thing was a big thing we talked about at the beginning of the season. And like if you look at the numbers, it didn't really... Like, they were last in the Sun Belt in batting average as a team, which is definitely not what you're looking for if you are professing to be small ball and getting after the average. I'm pulling up the stats here if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify. It was a 267 team average. John Beverly leading the way as a sophomore with a 364 batting average. Tied for second on the team with 42 RBIs and also 35 stolen bases. It's a guy who, if you can have him stick around, if you can have Wills McGinnis stick around, who also he leads the team with 8 home runs, has 42 RBIs as well. Hunter Carlson with the team lead with 48 RBIs. If you can keep a couple of these guys around that are younger guys that you want to keep developing, and harder to do these days, but it is something that they've been able to do with the offense. Something to build on there. And they have done it with guys they've found in the portal. They've done it with guys they've found in high school and kept. Like, they can bring bats along. We have seen that over these years. Even on some of the teams like this one that had a losing record, there were guys you pointed to that's like, in a couple of years, that guy could be really, really good for you. There's a lot less to say as far as the track record on the pitching side. They have a 6.10 ERA as a staff. Will Barkowski did a nice job kind of turning into a quasi-starter by the end of the year. Certainly worked some bulk innings. So that was a nice find out of the portal. Jake Embry, quote, leads the team with a 3.32 ERA, but only made 9 starts, did not make it through the full season. And everyone other than that had a 5 ERA or worse, and some quite a few worse than that. And that is basically a non-starter for competing at the top of the Sun Belt. And this is where I want to open up to David. A little trivia time, because I ran the numbers on this. Do you know the last time that Georgia State had a sub-6 ERA as a pitching staff?
It definitely wasn't either of the last 2 years. I mean, has it happened since like this podcast has been around? Because I think it has. Okay, because I know that they've hovered around 6. I didn't know if they got under it, so I'm gonna guess 2021.
Off by one. It was 2022. They had a 5.22 ERA. So yes, it has happened during this podcast, but it's been a few years. Do you know the last time they had a sub-5 ERA as a staff?
I don't say this to be disrespectful.
This one does predate the podcast.
I don't even know that that's possible for Georgia State pitching these days.
Yes, this was in 2015. They had a really good, actually, a 4.14 ERA. Massive jump.
That's actually really good.
It's been an issue. Like we've talked about, like the park factors. Certainly, with it being so far away and with a lot more enticing, even just when the Sun Belt, even within the state of Georgia, mid-major baseball, like there have been better places to get pitched on going to go pitch. And so I think that part one has been struggling to get guys to come. And then it's been getting guys to stay, because you look at it and like Rob Evans was the Friday starter a couple years ago. He's basically been Miami's ace in the ACC. Like he went there, he transferred there. He did not put up great numbers here when he was at Georgia State, but has developed into one of the better pitchers on an ACC staff who has made the tournament. So Ryan Watson was a reliable guy for a number of years here. There's even guys on this staff. Cole Roberts' numbers this year, he was 5.37 ERA, but like last year the numbers were better, and it's still a good arm. I think there's traits you like there for sure. They just haven't been able to get it all to come together, and kind of certainly since 2022 to a more manageable level. And it's been over a decade since it's been to the level you need to get to if you're trying to really realistically compete in the Sun Belt. So I'm curious if, just say what it is. If the small ball stuff was spin just based on who they kind of brought in, that's who were able to bring in this year, and whether the offense gets back to bashing a little bit more next year as they put together the roster, and just really what is immediately able to change with the picture on the pitching side, because that is kind of the anchor on this program, and it has been. They haven't been able to compete. They're not able to get enough outs. They're not able to limit the damage to where there were certainly series and there's certainly stretches where the pitching was better, but it is what is going to continue to hold them back if they can't get it below 5, or below 6 certainly, and then below 5 beyond that. So there's certainly, it's what stood out to me as I was crunching the numbers on this season, and it is, like I mentioned, there's 5 teams that made it. Few of those teams are basically pencil in, they're going to get 40 wins a year. It's like 40, 50 wins. Coastal, check. Southern Miss, check. Troy becoming that way under Skylar Meade. Like, there are some really, really tough teams that you're going to have to deal with. But they didn't make the tournament. Their resume was not nearly as sterling as some of the other teams. But you look at a program like App State. They were 3rd in the league this year. They racked up some really nice series wins. They beat a lot more teams than they lost to in league play, which is a tough task for everyone. It is certainly possible, but you've got to be able to get the roster. You've got to be able to retain the pitching you need to and get more quality pitching in and just kind of develop the staff out. And that's been a real, there's reasons why it hasn't worked for them, but the excuses start to go away. You're going into the ideal setup now with your new stadium, and so I still kind of look at it as like Brad Stromdahl and his staff have been recruiting and working with an arm tied behind their back. And so the fact that they get to a couple of 30-win seasons that didn't amount to anything as far as postseason, but were better than it had been before, I give them credit for that. And I still say they have had this real issue that has been not an excuse, but a reason why they've struggled to develop the pitching like they maybe are going to have wished they could have. Now you get into a place where that goes away, and it's like you're getting everything you need with the new stadium. You're going to be in the campus footprint. 2027 is going to be a really, really important year for this program and the direction that it's able to take under Brad Stromdahl.
Yeah, I mean, it just has to get better. I feel like I've said that very line for far too many sports at Georgia State lately. But I mean, the reality of the situation is I feel like they've tread water and they have improved. You know what I mean? Like, that's the challenging part about all of this is we're talking about a program who, when Stromdahl got here, like, this was a school winning 15 games, right. They were not, it could be way worse. And that's the unfortunate part about this, because you do have, the AFC East, not the AFC East, excuse me, the AL East, it's tough for the teams like the Orioles to compete sometimes because that the Red Sox and the Yankees are going to always be there. That the Tampa Bay Rays are always going to have some level of development. And like you mentioned, right off rip, people talk about how hard the Sun Belt East in football is, but like, when you know that you have to play Southern Miss, when you know that Coastal is in your conference, when you know that, there's going to be a team like an App State this year, it becomes very challenging. Like, you can't just kind of hit on your offseason. Like, you have to, figure of speech aside, knock it out of the park, And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, like, oh, it's great that Georgia State went 27-30 this year. No, obviously that's not the best. But at the same time, though, like, this is truthfully the level of competition that we're talking about and we're dealing with. So it sucks to sit here and say, like, yeah, 27-30, well, that's not that bad, because it could be worse, but that is legitimately the truth as it relates to this conference. It's just a bloodbath. And, hopefully there is a day where Georgia State baseball can accurately compete with those teams. They can have a run like App State this year where they are, pushing their way into the top. Fine. It's just not there right now. And I like what you said about the pitching, because I think we have kind of gotten away specifically about getting the pitching to where it needs to go. And why I say I like what you said is because it's not just the last couple of years where somebody has transferred out of Georgia State and not just been good, but has been great at their second spot, And something's got to be better here is what I mean. Just got to find a way to do something.
Yeah, and there was a couple, like Mason Patel goes to Georgia Tech, but Matt Taylor, who was his pitching coach here, is at Georgia Tech. So there's like some of them that you can explain. One makes sense to go to a program like Georgia Tech that right now is like one of the teams to beat in the whole sport. You know, they're the 2 seed, the national seed in the baseball tournament. You can look at those, and there's some that have made sense. It's just kind of like there's a connection there. Also, not the only guy who's gone from state to Tech in the last few years, and Matt Taylor's there. It makes a lot of sense. But you've got to be able to. It's not even just that you got to keep guys. It's like when a guy like Rob Evans comes through here and is on his way to eventually going to a place like Miami, and it's not the only example. You want him to be like an all-conference guy when he's here. It's not like you look back and say, this is clearly a really good pitcher. Why wasn't he that level here when the competition isn't what it is? You know, the Sun Belt is a great league, but it's at least, you know, when you're talking about the top of the ACC, the top of the ACC does, I think, trump the Sun Belt, you know, on a week-to-week basis. If he's been better there, then there's issues going on because it's like you're not.
That's a coaching thing, you know.
If you are going to get 1 year with a guy and like you know that's the way this world works nowadays, you need that year to be better. And they've missed some of those opportunities as well, where it's like you blink and a guy's gone, and then he's pitching really well at a new school at a power conference program, and it's like good for him. He certainly there was a lot there, but where was that here? When you had an opportunity when this guy was in your program. And it's not for lack of trying as far as, I don't even know the number of pitching coaches they've gone to, but they've cycled through a lot. There's been guys that come in and out without having more than 1 year in the program. So it's certainly something they are continuing to try to attack as far as Coach Strobdell knows the diagnosis and knows what needs to get fixed. But now it flips to, I guess as a microcosm for the entirety of Georgia State athletics right now, it's like, one of these programs has to exceed this level where they're at, where it's at best it's middle of the pack, at worst it is decidedly lower than that. And so 2027, I say it's a big year for baseball. It's really a big year for all of these sports because something's got to give somewhere because you're continuing to see people check out and you're getting apathy growing because it's like none of these sports are performing. So...
And there, you know, obviously this isn't the pod to do that, but there was real momentum. There really was, you know, and I think there was a lot of unnecessary and unwarranted apathy after, we'll say, 2023 for all sports. I get it now, you know, and it can be brought back to the levels that it was there. I'm not saying that it can't, because I mean, no disrespect to what is there now, but we're talking about, you know, being a hair under like great, not, you know, like we're talking about just being good. We're not even talking about being like elite or, you know, the top of the conference in anything. But I understand the apathy now, and it's going to continue to get worse if, you know, these sports continue to look like this.
The one thing that we keep going back to that is in the baseball program's favor, the baseball stadium continues to have more and more news around, you know, construction's been happening, and as of this month, the naming rights have been approved for what is now going to be Chastain Childers Field at Bill and Susan Reeves Stadium in the footprint of Atlanta Fulton County Stadium.
It just rolls straight off the tongue.
I will say, as people bemoaned the genericness of Convocation Center, and then Georgia State Stadium before that, and then it's like, oh, it's a corporate brand with Center Park Stadium and yada yada. Who cares about a credit union? This is as Georgia State as it gets. You know, it's Bill and Susan Reeves. If you know Georgia State athletics, they are some of the biggest supporters, donors that are around. Chase Childers, a former Georgia State baseball player who is died in line of duty as a police officer last year. So getting honored in that way by Zachary and Barbara Chastain, who were also involved with the program. Zach was a Georgia State baseball player in the 2000s, played alongside Chase. And so, whereas maybe the last couple haven't had that kind of, you know, you think of like Jordan Hare, Bryant Denny, you know, all these like, Georgia State does not had a name for their main stadiums based on any history in the program, or any kind of people who have come through and played, or people who are a big part of it behind the scenes, which is what you get in a lot of places. And you're getting that here with the stadium, and a dedication with one of the names in particular that is going to mean a lot to people who have been through the program. And I think there was a time where we thought it was going to be like, Hank Aaron Stadium or something, because there was the idea that there was going to be some tie-in there with the Aarons, given the historical nature of where the stadium is going to be placed. But this almost feels like, if you were holding out hope for that, this is maybe even better, just because it feels more like a Georgia State flair, which, let's face it, there hasn't been much of. When we started recording this podcast, the basketball, which was a very proud program at the time, was playing in a place called the Georgia State Sports Arena, which is kind of what you put in as like the generic name for stadiums when you don't have the names for the rights in like sports video games. So it's like, this is not that, and there's a heart behind it as well. So, and just, for plainness, it's like you don't get stadium rights, naming rights for stadiums where they're not close to being done, which Georgia State fans have been waiting on for years at this point for this to happen. And so it's like, this is one of the final things before it's like, there is a stadium, there's baseball being played, which is now the expectation heading into the 2027 season. And this team will finally, we'll take that off the things we keep talking about on the podcast when we talk about baseball. Like, it'll be here.
Didn't Center Park become the sponsor in 22? Right?
I think it was before that. I feel like it was like, it might have been like when we started the pod. I feel like it was Georgia State Stadium for at least the first couple years, but I think it was like maybe 2019, 2020 when Center Park.
But, my point being, they played at Georgia State Stadium for several seasons and then got the sponsor. So you're certainly correct that it was going to take some time for something to happen in that regard. But I just hope that it's a nice stadium and they play baseball there. And it's all, I love the plans that they've been trying to make in that area, because having it all be in one central location would be so helpful for Georgia State.
Yeah, we've still kicked the renderings into the long grass. A lot of stuff took our attention, and then kind of this limp to the end of the season, let's call it what it is, from us. We'll still address that, and ideally, because it's a 5-year plan and you're hoping to see progress on that stuff, there'll be more concrete stuff on that in the future. And so at some point we will
construction concrete.
Didn't even mean to do it. Yeah, I can't help it. We'll have more to bring that back into the conversation when we resume, because this is going to be it for us for now. No promises that we won't be back if there's an interview that makes sense to line up or whatever. Certainly, we always keep our eyes open, our door open for opportunities like that. And certainly, like, the podcasts where we speak the least are the best ones, because it means we're probably talking to someone who is really worth hearing from on some faction of Georgia State sports, or as we had on Shane Metlin talk about John Cremens when he was at JMU. Like, we do love having people on that can speak to some of these subjects in greater detail and take a seat back, sit back, hit the mute button, and let other people speak on it. That's still a possibility to come. As I mentioned at the top, this is episode 299, still kind of insane. And just from my point of view, I'll be honest, I want to bring back episode 300 and bring back some of the joy, because I feel like some of it's the way that Georgia State's been going. Some of it's been stuff completely away from the podcast microphone, but it's like, this has been a slog to get to this point for me. And I say that like being careful, because at the end of the day, I'm still just talking into a microphone. But like, this has been a big year. We go to video. I've taken a lot more responsibility on editing, getting it up, making sure the video looks all good and everything. And I have appreciated, the numbers have gone up significantly for us. We appreciate everyone who has tuned in. If you are a new listener or a new regular listener this year, we definitely appreciate that. And I want to reset. I want to kind of reset the stakes on where the football roster is, the basketball rosters are, as those continue to be put together for the fullest extent. I want to give you my A game, which I feel has been slipping as we've kind of gotten to the end of this year. So that's just me. Cards on the table. We are a Cards on the Table podcast always and forever. I want to make sure that we are back and hitting that milestone number of 300 episodes, which is still just insane to think about, that I am giving the best that I can offer, because we want people to come back and feel like you're getting the best Georgia State podcast you can hope for. And so all that to say, this is going to be it from us for a little bit of time. Return to be determined, but we hope everyone enjoys the summer as much as we are going to. And I think we all hope there will be something interesting to talk about with Georgia State sports as we head into the fall and football arrives and a pivotal season awaits Del McGee and his staff.
Yeah, should be a good time. As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, commenting. The support means a lot, truthfully, and we will get through this slog of Georgia State sports together. That is the thing that keeps me going, because at some point it will get better. I truthfully believe that at some point it will get better.
And in the meantime, we're hitting a reset button, and just in general, always open to suggestions on what the podcast could be. I mentioned we're going to still look to line up those interviews and hear from people, and so we are on the ball with all that stuff. But any ideas you might have, hit me up on Twitter, hit comments on the YouTube page or on Spotify. We are always open to improving the podcast, and we really want to make 2026, 2027 even better for us on the Thursday Night Podcast, as I'm sure you're out there hoping that it is even better for Georgia State athletics as a whole. But in the meantime, thank you for listening to this episode, and we will catch you next time, whenever that might be, on the Thursday Night Podcast.